You know the vibes. Welcome back to another episode of the Hoop Genius podcast brought to you by NBA 2K24. And today we're pretty excited for NBA 2K25 as the cover athletes have been announced. Jason Tatum, Asia Wilson, and Vince Carter will be the cover athletes for NBA 2K25. Of course, Jason Tatum, the champion, the reigning champion of the NBA alongside his Boston Celtics. Asia Wilson, who's been a winner on so many levels. And then, of course, Vince Carter, who's going to be inducted to the Hall of Fame today. Oh, not today, but at some point during the summer.
September.
I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm just be too excited now.
Exactly.
I seen the cover art drop. They got Vince playing in gold, doing one of his signature dunks for the Toronto Raptors. And I've heard rumors that the Raptors are bringing back some of their OG branding. So you might see some purple and a little bit of the classic designs over there in Toronto. But Scott, if you're picking up one of those copies, which one of those players is speaking out to you right now?
First of all three are so well deserving, Bo. As you mentioned, Jason Tatum, man, look, kudos to him. NBA champion now. He finally got over the mountaintop, and it's great to see because he really earned it, and as well as the rest of his teammates, man. That guy put a lot into it, had a lot of heartbreak along the way, but that's what happens and what's sometimes necessary to become a champion. Asia Wilson, MVP of the WNBA, and obviously one of the faces of that league and two-time champion. I think they're going for their third championship in a row. Kudos to her. But you know me, Mo. I'm gonna go with a little nostalgia and Mr. Vince Carter. I remember Vince, known him since he was a younger player in the league. He used to spend some time up in Toronto when he first started playing with Toronto. Friend of mine, Butch Carter, was the head coach at that time. So I used to go to training camp, watch them work out a lot, spend a lot of time with him, and just to watch his growth and development, and would see some games up in Toronto. Man, was that atmosphere electric with Vince Carter, man. The memorable plays that he would make in that building.
Is there one that stands out to you?
I tell you what, maybe not in that building, but once I moved on and started working in Detroit, he had a memorable dunk when he came into the Palace. When he went down the lane, and we had best defensive front line in basketball, Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace, those guys up front. And he jumped, they jumped, and he moved the basketball and found a way to dunk it in there. And I said, oh my goodness. I mean, again, obviously you don't want to see that happen to your team, but he was something special to behold. And just watch his maturation and growth as a player. He came in the league as just this big time athlete, but his shot got better and better, his ability to create for himself. And above and beyond that, really, really a class person. And the short time that I was in Sacramento, when we went out into free agency, he was one of the three guys we signed in free agency there too. So a lot of special memories with Vince. Happy for him, well-deserved getting into the Hall of Fame. And so to answer your question, that probably would be my favorite cover there, Mo. Mr. Vince Carter, as aptly named, appropriately named by Kenny Smith at one time, half man, half amazing. So great job by him. Great career by him.
And what's crazy with Vince is the longevity of his career as well. Because you talked about him dunking on the Pistons, but I remember a couple of dunks when he was on the Kings, and I'm watching it thinking, this old man can still fly, huh?
Fly. Oh, yeah. And everybody remembers the international competition when
the dunk over
Frederick Weiss. Over Frederick Weiss.
That might be the best dunk ever in a game. Ever, in any game, anywhere, ever.
Yeah. No, it was like I said, unbelievable.
Absolutely. So it's exciting times for NBA 2K25. And, I like playing the My GM, My NBA modes where you can be a GM and take control of a franchise. So we're going to continue breaking down the offseason for you. And today we're talking a bit about the Oklahoma City Thunder, who were the #1 seed in the Western Conference last year. They had a good playoff run for their first time out. They handily dispatched of the Pelicans in the first round. And, there were some tough matchups over there in the West. So they decided they're not going to stand pat despite being the #1 seed. they're going to get better. And we already spoke about them trading Josh Giddey for Alex Caruso and just how much that's going to improve their teams. But they did make another splash in free agency. They signed Isaiah Hartenstein to a 3-year, $87 million contract. Scott, right off the bat, what was your initial thought when you saw this?
A lot of money. You're asking for my truthful response. It's an awful lot of money. But understand, again, this is the nuance, if you will, of free agency. Oklahoma City knew that the Knicks were capped on what they could pay him because they only retained his early bird rights. So I believe the Knicks could only pay him $18 million per season. So Oklahoma City, armed with a lot of cap space and a definite need for some physicality and additional size alongside Chet Holmgren and someone, whether he plays alongside him, backs him up, and Isaiah fits their culture. Obviously, I know Isaiah was in New York when we signed him originally as a free agent, and to watch him grow and improve in each season that he was there in New York, sure the Oklahoma City Thunder had their eyes on him. Knowing Sam Presti in that group the way I do, it's important not only the skill set and what they were looking for and needed, but the fit of the person. And so they identified this guy as that, and I see him, knowing Isaiah like I do, and knowing that situation. So from a basketball fit and a culture fit, it works really nice. Had to pay more than what his stats would suggest that, you should pay, but it's a shorter term deal. Really, you look at it, it's a 2-year deal with the third year being a team option. And so at that time, the Oklahoma City Thunder can make a decision after 2 years whether they want to retain him at that salary, opt in, trade him, or keep him. So a lot of flexibility there. Big win for Isaiah financially, and plus for him, now he doesn't sacrifice playing for a winning organization. He's going to Oklahoma City, as you mentioned. It was the number 1 seed in the West and will be firmly in the mix for a Western Conference championship. So big win for Isaiah, big win for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And it does impact the Knicks negatively some because now they've got to find a backup center to Mitchell Robinson.
So let's start by talking about the basketball fit over there in Oklahoma City. I think the biggest flaw that the Thunder had was their rebounding. And if you watch the NBA playoffs, you'll just know how tenacious Isaiah Hartenstein is on the boards, in particular the offensive rebounds. There are a number of key ones that, in fact, won some games for the Knicks in the playoffs. So he comes in and he addresses that rebounding need instantly. I think he averages about 8 a game, but you got to remember his stats are impacted by coming off the bench and being a star and not having that defined role. But what I love about this is what we've been saying on the podcast all year long is if you can play Chet Holmgren at the 4, because of his versatility, he can shoot from the outside, he can guard on the outside. This really opens up a whole new level of possibilities. And I think the biggest concern that I've seen people have about the signing of Hartenstein, if you do start him at the 5 with Chet at the 4, is that OKC had this beautiful 5-out offense going on, and they worry about him being a non-shooter. And what I say to that is they were playing a 5-out offense with Josh Giddey, who's also a non-shooter. But the advantage of a player like Hartenstein and having a big body and being an elite screener, and I think they're going to incorporate a lot more dribble handoffs as well this season coming up now, is that just because you can't shoot, it doesn't mean that you can't space the floor. Because simply by being an active screener and moving off the ball, oftentimes the other team's big will now sag off of Hartenstein and stay in the paint. So if he is to go and screen for someone or pitch a dribble handoff to someone, that usually involves a then 2-on-1 attack going downhill, because the big is sagged off in the paint. So it's going to allow guys like gilgeous-alexander to get to their pull-up bag. It's going to allow Hartenstein, maybe if he can get to his mid-range for a little pick and pop, or, there's a lot of different variations of what can happen here. So being a non-3-point shooting player doesn't actually impact the spacing as negatively as some fans might think. What do you think about that?
No, great observation, Mo. And I think he's going to fit seamlessly in their offense. And there's one other thing that he does very well, aside from the offensive rebounding, the screening, the activity that he brings on that end of the floor. He's a really underrated passer, Mo. He can pass the basketball, so that he's going to allow them to do some special things offensively with his ability to pass the ball, and you got to account. And it's not like he's a total non-threat offensively. You got to, when a guy is that active on the offensive glass, you got to dedicate a body to him. You got to account for where he's at, and and if you're off of him too far, now you're giving him a running start to get to the rim when that big is in help position. So I think it's going to work well. Again, this is what you have. A very good coach who's coach of the year last year, Mark Dagnall. I'm sure they'll spend all summer figuring out ways to utilize Isaiah. Then once they get him on the court in training camp and really see what he can do, and Isaiah is a worker. And and I would believe this offseason, I'm sure he's out there working on his perimeter shot as well. Because coming in the door of New York, that was one of the goals that he had for himself, was to be able to start stretching the floor a little bit. Didn't come to fruition as much as he would have liked, or maybe the team would have liked, but it's something that I think he can continually work towards. And, maybe he realizes that at some point during his contract with the Oklahoma City Thunder.
When you talk about him coming into New York, I was kind of surprised at that move, because every time I watched him with the Clippers, I thought this guy is one of the best backup bigs that we've got around. Why did the Clippers not want to keep him, and how did that conversation go with the Knicks in terms of recruiting him to play over there?
No, the Clippers liked him, believe they wanted to keep him. Again, they were a tax team, so being able to pay him more in free agency, having some money to be able to go and get him, it was what just happened here in reverse to the Knicks. The Knicks were kind of capped with what they could pay him. Oklahoma City could pay him far and above what his his market value may have been to be able to obtain his services. So worked out great for Isaiah in both times. Got him on a huge stage in New York City. It was part of a couple, big playoff runs in New York. My last year in New York, and this past season, going to the conference semifinals. Now he's going to a team that was in the conference semifinals last year in that tough Western Conference. It should be better, and may have an opportunity now. Look at getting to a conference final or an NBA final.
I think the other advantage of adding him in, if you do start him, is it allows Jalen Williams to shift from the 4 to the 3. Because essentially he was like a shooting guard playing the 4 position. So it gives OKC more size across the court, which no doubt will help the rebounding issue that we spoke about.
Great point. So much is made of this, small ball in today's era. Look, size still matters, as we know. And you saw it in the finals this year with the Boston Celtics, because they have size across the board. So when you can put bigger players out there that have some skill, and I think it's a natural to have Chet Holmgren playing some 4, because his body type is not made right now to be battling on the interior with 280-pound centers night in and night out. But you put him out there on the 4, he's very on the floor at the 4 position. He can stretch it, obviously, with his ability to shoot. He's very adept at putting it on the floor, and he's long enough and athletic enough to be able to match up with most 4s in the league as well, too. So I like it for them to have that additional size, so that as they go through that gauntlet of the Western Conference, and teams with size like Denver Nuggets and people like that, they're going to be able to match up just fine now.
Absolutely, because say we take the Denver Nuggets, for example. Instead of Holmgren having to match up with Jokic, he can now match up with Aaron Gordon, who's not a great three-point shooter, and it allows him to be an even better help defender coming across from the weak side to block shots at the rim. Or if you match up with the Dallas Mavericks, instead of him having to go up against Gafford and play that physical interior basketball, he's now matched up with PJ Washington. And you saw that the Celtics could help off him. And if you got Chet Holmgren helping off him, that's going to be scary hours. Is it too early to say that the OKC are favorites to come out of the West?
I know you like doing that, Mo. You like doing it this early in July. You like putting people in the finals. They would be one of my two or three favorites. It's tough for me to say right now in that Western Conference. I think Dallas did a little bit to get better. I'm never going to discount the Denver Nuggets because they've got Nikola Jokic there. And what happened to them last season, I think they'll come back with an even bigger chip on their shoulder to get back to a championship round. And then the Minnesota Timberwolves, you talk about having size on the front line, being able to match up with them. They went to the conference finals. They got a taste of it. And you got Anthony Edwards, who's really emerged as a superstar in this league, and he's feeling like, okay, it's my turn now. So I'm not going to just put them there yet, but they're obviously firmly in the mix amongst those teams right there. And it'll be interesting to see how it all comes together, Mo.
Yes, sir. Well, let's talk about the other side of things because the Knicks obviously losing a player in free agency, not getting anything back in return. But the biggest impact is their now big man rotation because essentially at the five, you just have Mitchell Robinson left. And I know Jericho Sims has been working hard on his game all summer long. I don't know if he's at the point yet to be contributing what Isaiah Hartenstein did last season, especially with Mitchell Robinson's injury history. How do you see this impacting the front court for the New York Knicks?
Definitely has an impact for sure. The Knicks, Coach Thibodeau, he likes big people that can protect the rim. I'm sorry, rebound the basketball and anchor the team defensively. And that 1-2 punch of Mitchell Robinson and Isaiah Hartenstein was as good as there was in the league at being able to do those two things. Not being around it, I didn't get a chance to see Jericho Sims much this year to really gauge how much he has grown. My guess is they're still trying to figure out, is there another veteran option? I know Precious Achiuwa was on the roster last year, who they got in the trade with OG and Anunoby, and played very well for the Knicks from where I sat last year. He brought a lot of energy, activity, may not be quite the same level of rim protector as Mitchell Robinson, but he brings great activity, and he can, and because he's a little smaller. I think Precious is only like 6'9". But he knows the system. I would imagine that they're trying to find out a way to bring him back now that there's a little more comfort. They would have a little more comfort level if Mitch, and I knock on wood there, happens to miss any extended period of time again next season. Then you have someone like Precious, who played a lot this year. In when guys were out, and when Mitchell was out all that time, he filled in admirably in Mitchell's space. So they're going to need him, I believe, because you don't want to look at trying to play Julius at backup five, even though he can. But he's not going to give you the rim protection. Now, he'll give you tremendous offense, and he can play with some physicality, but you're not going to have the defensive rim protection there if you move Julius over to the five position and to backing up Mitch in that way. So I think you need a defensive-minded guy to fit with the way that Tom Thibodeau and the Knicks are going to want to play.
Now, rim protection is obviously huge in the NBA, but oftentimes it's huge now because guards don't play very good defense on the perimeter. They get blown by, and you need to have a rim protector there. But the luxury for the Knicks is that they re-signed OG Anunoby, one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA, and they added Mikal Bridges, one of the best perimeter defenders in the NBA. So I guess even though it is a need for that team, it's kind of the blow has been softened a little bit by having now elite guys on the perimeter that can guard up and stop their guys going past them.
No question about that, Mo. Probably on one team, you probably have the two guys who two of the top 5 or 6 wing defenders in the league on one team. So, in Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby. So,
and Josh Hart ain't half bad either.
And then let's not forget about Josh Hart, obviously. So they're going to be very good. And Dante DiVincenzo does a nice job defensively as well. So they're going to be very solid defensively on the perimeter, to your point. But Mo, as you know, though, these offensive guys in this league now are so good, and no matter how good defensively you may be on the perimeter, these guys are going to get a step and they're going to get around them sometimes. And
Mhm.
whether it's just beating them straight off a one-on-one situation or, the ball is swung and you're attacking them on a closeout, getting to the rim. So there's still going to be a lot of opportunities where guys still get into the lane. And if Mitchell's not in the game, to be able to have someone else to be able to actively come over, if not block the shot, just be able to show his body and make the finish at the rim a little more difficult. So I'm sure they'll get it figured out, but I know that that team, they wanted to keep Isaiah for sure. I know that, but just financially weren't able to do it.
What do you think about having some stretches with OG Anunoby at the 5? Because we saw in the finals Jason Tatum guard the 5 position. And I guess unless you're going up against Denver or the Sixers, where they've got those elite scoring big men who post up, when you look at most other teams in the NBA, could you live with playing OG Anunoby at the 5 in certain stretches if necessary?
I can see that in the regular season, Mo. For
Because we saw
sure,
a
I can
bit in
see
the
it.
playoffs as well when Mitch
Yeah, I
got
know.
injured against
We
the
saw, yeah,
Sixers.
we saw it in the playoffs. I don't disagree with that. I don't think you want to have that as your sole plan going into the season, though. Is that okay? Hey, we got OG and he's going to be our backup 5. Can he be our emergency 5? Absolutely. Because then, too, if you have him playing the 5 for too long of stretches, you're taking him away from things that he does well.
And he's often injured, I guess, in the scale of things.
Yes. So again, as an emergency option, yes, makes sense. I like it. But as a plan going into the season, I'm not as high on it because again, I think he's really established himself excellent perimeter defender, guarding 2s, 3s, 4s, even away from the basket. And then it also allows him, it doesn't tangle him up so when he goes under the other end offensively, he can get out and space the floor and do some of the things that he likes to do offensively. If you have him locked in playing the 5, now he's in a different position offensively as well, too. And it may take him a little bit out of his comfort zone on that end, too.
Now, Scott, I love to ask you these things. If the Knicks and the OKC Thunder met in a 7-game series, how would you see that going? Because I think that's a very, very interesting scenario because we would only really see them meet if they were to get to the NBA Finals. But just hypothetically, if those two teams were to go head to head for 7 games, how do you see that going?
Woo, Mo, boy, you asking the tough ones today.
You know what it is.
Yeah, I know what it is. Look, love the depth of the Knicks, love the fight and the toughness of the Knicks. But on the OKC side, man, they've got a 6'6" point guard that's gonna be hard. That's gonna be really hard to deal with, and that's Gilgeous-Alexander. So, going into it, I might lean a little that way just because of him. No slight at Jalen Brunson, who has become a big-time all-star in New York. But 6'6" against 6'1", they both do a lot of similar things. But you mentioned it. They got great wing play now with Bridges and Anunoby. But there's good wing play over at OKC too. We talk about Jalen Williams. They've added Alex Caruso now. And you got Lou Dort there. So there's some toughness on the wings there too. And but I'm gonna give Shai Gilgeous-Alexander just the slight edge because I thought really he arguably was the MVP this year, and I expect him to be that. Now that's my hot take, Mo. That's my early pick for next year. MVP will be Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
I see it absolutely because I think what people don't realize is when you look at what the Grizzlies did when they went and got Steven Adams to be that big body screener for Ja Morant to allow him to get more open, I think adding Hartenstein to this team is only going to help Shai Gilgeous-Alexander have more ease with scoring the basketball, and as well with Hartenstein being an underrated passer, he's going to be able to open things up as well. And I expect Jalen Williams as well to improve. He's
Yeah,
still a
no
very young
question.
player in this league,
Yeah.
and I expect
But
him to make a leap.
well, see, that's the thing about OKC. When we're talking about them comparing them to the Knicks, OKC is still so young. A lot of those guys have not hit their ceilings as players. And you're going to see them working towards that again this season and the seasons, a couple seasons afterwards. So that trajectory is on a steady incline. And the Knicks are a younger team, but Jalen Brunson, I mean, you kind of he had a phenomenal year last year, so you kind of know what he's going to be. He's not going to take off anymore athletically. There's not any more growth
Yeah,
athletically in
the
his
guys on
game.
the Knicks are who they are
They
at this
are,
point in their
yeah,
career, and they're
yeah,
great
yeah,
players.
and they're
But with
great players.
OKC, I think the biggest thing as well that everyone's talking about Wemby, but Chet Holmgren as
So
well, going into
I
his
was
second season.
I was just going ready to go there with you on Chet Holmgren. Look, he's going to get naturally stronger just with age. And I'm sure he's in the weight room working very hard to increase his flexibility and strength as well. But he's a very confident player too, and skilled player. And what's Chet 7'1"?
That's what they list him at. He
Listen,
might
man,
be
yeah,
even bigger.
yeah, and so that he is just really scratching the surface on how good he's going to become as an NBA player. So the OKC is going to be around for a while. Just like when we were talking about the other day, the San Antonio Spurs having a long runway with Victor Wembanyama. But you have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who's a young point guard, who's in the MVP conversation already, and an emerging star like Chet Holmgren on the same team. OKC has a long runway too in terms of competing for a championship. So they're going to be tough to deal with, and it's going to be really interesting to watch the maturation of this team this season, because now the expectations are here from the beginning of the year. Last year, people didn't have OKC going into last season as the pick to have the top record in the Western Conference.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as you did with the moves made this offseason and what they accomplished last year, I would imagine a lot of prognosticators and predictors in this space are going to have OKC as the number one team in the Western
I got
Conference.
them coming out of the West, and I got Shea as the MVP. But here's the
Yeah.
other thing with Chet. He averaged, 16.5 points, 8 rebounds, 2 blocks a game. If he can get to 20 and 10 with
Yeah.
2 or 3 blocks a game, boy.
That's coming in his future, whether it's this season or the following season. But Chet Holmgren will average 20 a game in this league.
Oh, easily,
and,
if not more.
right, if not more, of course. And then and he'll get to where he's averaging 10 rebounds a game too, to go along with 3 or 4 blocks.
Yep. That's the scary part. That's the scary part. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested to see how this season goes. I think OKC, not the most appealing brand in the NBA when you think about the franchises, but it's a brand that everyone's going to have to get used to seeing in the conference finals season after season because they're so young and they've got so much potential. And I love the way that their books look with the way that it's all lined up. Obviously, Chet Holmgren will get a max extension in just over a year from now. And they've got guys like Isaiah Joe and Aaron Wiggins coming off the bench, which are going to be huge. And of course, they've still got Lou Dort, who now can come off the bench for them or start even for them if they want more size in the starting lineup. So I'm very, very excited. And of course, Nikola Topic, who I don't believe is going to play this season, as he picked up an injury. But even when he gets to the league, one of the best young players in Europe, it gets even more dangerous.
Well, OKC has done an excellent job for years. I mean, I'm gonna go back, work with Sam Presti in the very beginning. They were the Seattle Sonics the last year in Seattle before moving to OKC. And development was a huge part of what he envisioned for the culture of the organization. And they really have continued to build upon that year after year. And that'll be the thing. As long as they can hold on to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Chet Holmgren, and you got Jalen Williams there. That's kind of, quote unquote, your big three. they will be able to rotate guys in and out based on, if some guys play so well that they kind of price themselves out of what they're able to pay or willing to pay in OKC. They'll have young players coming up in their atmosphere. And you mentioned a guy like Topic, who, like I said, won't even play there this year, but will be on their developmental team. If so a couple of years from now, you may see him, impacting an OKC. And they do a terrific job with the G League in terms of developing players. You talk about guys like Wiggins that are just on their team this year, and Isaiah Joe that you mentioned. Finding guys like that to come in and play a role for the team, and heck, their head coach was developed down on their G League team. So a lot of teams talk about it, but they have really put it into action and have. In terms of putting the actions behind their words of really wanting to be a true developmental program, and they've done it as well as anybody in the league.
And they've got about 1 million draft picks. So
Yeah.
you got all that to play.
Yeah.
You can even make a trade, or you can even
Just,
use those players coming in on rookie scale contracts to contribute right away to your roster.
Yes, no question. So they're going to maintain the flexibility, and what they really understand there too is that by and large, OKC will not be a free agent destination when you're talking about especially the big names. And so they've done this, very wisely in terms of, like I said, building this serious developmental culture and raising people up in their system. So now a player that is there, they're homegrown. They like it. They know what it's about. And they want to continue to be a part of it. So they don't have to be heavily reliant upon free agent signings. I know we just got done talking about them going out and getting an Isaiah Hartenstein. But, Isaiah, in all due respect to him, is a high-level role player. They weren't going out to, be able to get into Klay Thompson sweepstakes or Paul George. Yeah.
Even though they did have Paul George.
Even though they had him.
Yeah,
they had him. But they got Paul via trade, not, via free agency. So in OKC, to get the team better, they got to develop from within and normally trade like they did this summer, obviously with Alex Caruso. So they're going to over this next decade, I would expect them to be relevant in all the NBA news cycles in terms of being highly competitive for NBA championships.
Absolutely. Well, I can't wait to see how it all unfolds. And Scott and I will be back tomorrow breaking down more off-season moves from around the NBA. So make sure you subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcast from. Scott, as always, it's been a pleasure, my brother.
Always a pleasure, Mo.
Yes, sir.
I know what time of the show it is now.
Let them know, Scott. You let them know.
Let them know.
You let them know.
And until next time, get buckets.
Hey.